What's going on? Welcome to Tech with Sean, and behind me is a 48-inch LG OLED, and I've been using this as my primary display for the last couple months, so today I just wanted to run through some pros, cons, and some considerations that you may want to keep in mind if you're thinking about picking one of these up as a gaming monitor. Now, this isn't going to be like a full technical review with like color percentages and response times. There's lots of other YouTubers that do reviews like that way better than me, so I advise you to go check them out. First off, let's talk about the pros, and above all, we've got the color and contrast that you get with OLED. So because each pixel can turn all the way off individually, you just get supreme contrast. You can have a bright white pixel directly next to a black pixel that's pure black, and LCDs just cannot do this, IPS monitors cannot do this, and it delivers a visual experience that's just on another level compared to other displays. Another big pro for OLED technology is the basically immediate response time. There's not a whole lot of ghosting because each pixel is changing color itself. It's not, moving in front of a light. You just basically get immediate response times, and for gaming it's really nice because there's less ghosting and it just feels real snappy when you're controlling it. Next off, the size. I mean, it's big. It's a 48-inch monitor. You're filling your whole perspective. It's really immersive. If you have room for it on your desk, having a big monitor is something that a lot of people want. So that's a pro for a lot of people. It's also glossy. It's really hard to find glossy displays these days. You do have some downsides with it being glossy, but you also get a richness in the color and the picture that you don't get with a matte finish display. Because when that light hits the matte angle, it creates some fuzziness and you lose a little bit of detail. So yeah, just having a glossy display, that's a pro for a lot of people. It also has pretty decent built-in speakers, so maybe you can clean up your desktop setup, put your speakers in a box and just use the built-in ones, because here I have a C10 and it's pretty decent. There's a little bit of bass in there. It's a nice full sound. And you could easily replace your desktop speakers with the built-in speakers on one of these. And the last big pro I'm going to go over, it's one of the reasons that these are so popular to use as gaming monitors, and that is HDMI 2.1. So, with having 4 HDMI 2.1 inputs, that means anything you plug in there, as long as the device you're plugging it into and the cable support it, will be able to go up to 4K 120 Hertz. For gaming, that's a really, really nice experience. What else can you say? Alright, now going from the good to the bad, let's move into what some of the cons are for using a monitor like this. It's no secret with OLED there are potential burn-in issues. If you leave static content on the screen for a long time, if you have, elements on the screen in the same spot with your workflow all the time, there is a chance that you're going to have some image persistence and burn-in on a display like this. The CX and C1 do have more technology in there to mitigate burn-in than previous models, but it still is just inherent with the display technology. So how you actually use the monitor will dictate a lot about whether or not you're going to experience burn-in. If you're mostly using it for media consumption, watching movies, playing games, probably not going to have many issues, but if you're using it in a certain workflow where you have static windows on the screen all day, or you're using it for a security system with a static GUI that's up all the time, you're vastly more likely to experience burn-in on something like this. Another thing that can be annoying for some people with desktop usage is the auto dimming. Now, I've seen that there's ways you can go into certain menus and disable this, but some people may not want to do that. It honestly hasn't been an issue for me because I don't really work on this computer. I really just use this for gaming and stuff, so if that is an issue in Photoshop and stuff, I'm on my work computer when I'm doing that. So if you are somebody who does a lot of work on their computer and you think that the brightness auto dimming stuff could be annoying, that's something you definitely might want to keep in mind. And especially if for some reason you wanted multiple monitors, I know Barnacles, the YouTuber, he had 3, I think, OLEDs, which that's kind of overkill if you ask me. But I guess when you're dragging content between the different monitors, it can do weird stuff with the auto dimming. So that's something to keep in mind if you were planning on buying 3 of these. But, for my use case where I'm mostly using this just as a gaming PC, I honestly have not really noticed the auto dimming stuff. So again, it's going to really depend a lot on how you use the monitor, whether or not that's an issue for you. One other con of a monitor like this is the size. Now, I know I also listed that in the pros because some people like having a huge monitor, but with a consumer OLED, this is pretty much the smallest you can get right now. There are some like 32-inch, high-end monitors that are like $4,000, but 48 is a big boy. And if you wanted a smaller monitor and you want OLED, it's just not going to happen right now. So size, you got to have a big desk. It weighs a lot. You got to sit pretty far back from it. It does have some cons with the size itself, but it comes with the territory using a 48-inch screen. Another thing I mentioned in the pros that could also be a con for some people is the glossy finish. Now, you do get richer color with the gloss, but you know what else you get? You get reflections. So depending on if you're in a light room, or it can vary greatly. Some people are going to be in a darker room. They're not really ever going to notice it. Somebody might try setting this up directly opposite from a window and just be like looking at their front yard and the reflection on their monitor all day. So it's really gonna vary a lot depending on the location and the usage. So it's just something to keep in mind and to think about, where you're gonna put it in your setup and how reflections might affect the surface. One other potential con is eye strain. Now, this is a big, bright monitor with really, really, really strong contrast, and that delivers a striking picture, but that striking picture is also striking to your eyeballs. Having that much light and contrast beamed at you, especially in a dark room, over, if you're using it for several hours, some people do get eye strain. So if that's the case for you, you may want to look at increasing the room lighting or possibly lowering the brightness of the display when you're using it for a long time. Or, some people don't notice it at all. So it's going to be one of those things where it depends on your eyeballs and how sensitive they are. But some people do get eye strain from working on screens like this. And one more con that I'm going to go over, this is really just for the PC gamers, but this has 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, but it has 0 display ports. So, HDMI works fine for video. It even sends audio over and stuff, but it would be nice to have a display port just for the flexibility. Okay, so those were the main pros and cons, and now I just want to go through some general considerations that you may want to keep in mind when you're thinking about using one of these. First and foremost is the ergonomics and what do you want to use the monitor for. A 48-inch screen is not for everybody. If you're doing office work or something, I would not recommend this. You're going to be sitting in front of it, you're going to be craning your neck to look up in the corners to see, your file menu all the time. I would really recommend this to somebody who's mostly using their computer for media consumption and gaming. And again, with the burn-in stuff, if your workflow, where if you have static stuff on the screen all the time, you are going to have more burn-in issues than someone who's using it for mostly media consumption. So yeah, I would just say media consumption, gaming, yes. Office work, probably not. And even within gaming, there may be considerations you have with what type of games do you play. Are you a competitive CSGO player? If so, this may not be for you. Just because even though it is 120 Hz, a lot of competitive gamers want a faster screen even than that. And with the size, I don't know that it's necessarily an advantage. Like, yeah, your opponents may be bigger on the screen, but you're gonna have to look all around to be able to see people on the periphery. I ain't no competitive gamer. In fact, you don't want me on your team in Call of Duty at all. But I do know that a lot of competitive gamers do prefer a smaller screen. I think a lot of them like a 24-inch 1080p, like 360 Hz screen. And this is pretty much the opposite of that. It's slower and way bigger. So if you like Red Dead, Cyberpunk, Assassin's Creed, stuff like that, where it's like immersive, you're in a big world and you want to see all the cool stuff, that is where the screen shines. But for the Call of Duty and Counter-Strike Go online competitive people, this is probably not the screen for you. Now, these do work well as monitors, but you also want to keep in mind that they do have a lot of TV-centric features. So they have like smart apps built in. You're going to use a remote to control it. It's not going to wake up with your mouse movement. You're going to have to use the remote to turn it on. So there are some weirdness and some quirks involved with using a smart TV as your monitor, but it comes with the territory because it's really the smallest consumer OLED on the market right now. So all in all, I would say that this makes a really good monitor in certain setups and for people who enjoy certain types of media, but the size and some of the quirks with OLED prevent it from being practical in most setups. With OLED, you're basically getting the best image quality possible. Nothing else is really on the same level of the color and contrast and response time that this is delivering, so if you want to feel immersed in a bright, vivid game world, there's really nothing that is anything like it available right now. But it does also at the same time have some drawbacks, and it's not that practical for use as a general monitor for, daily tasks. So really you just have to weigh what's important to you with the monitor, how you're going to use it, and how practical it is in your setup before you make that buying decision on something like this. I hope this was entertaining or informative at least. If you liked this video, give it a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next video.